one of the greatest things that I ever did, and as a slow reader, well, my dad used to read to us and every night in this monotonal voice. And I think I didn't mind. In the Sunday school, they would, once a year, you got prizes, and the prizes were books. And so my dad would read the books, and lots of them were about missionaries. And so he would read, and I just absolutely loved that. So it opened my mind to stories.
From the Florida Parent Educators Association, home of the largest homeschool convention in America, this is the Not by the Book podcast. I'm your host, FPEA Chairman Suzanne Nunn, and together we will hear from guests who share their journey to who and where they are today. Each one of them at some point left the expected path, ripped the page out of the book that says you have to do it like this, and made their own way. I hope these conversations inspire you as much as they do me. Today I have a fun conversation with Geoff Benge, prolific author and co-author of the series Christian Heroes Then and Now and Heroes of History. We talk about childhood days in New Zealand and the interesting educational journey he experienced. And how does one unexpectedly become a writer? We talk about where and how the page turned, and he became an author of some of the most loved biographies for young people. Many of you will be familiar with his work as the YWAM books. I'm sure you'll love to hear his story. Let's listen now.
Geoff as a little boy.
Yeah.
I grew up, as you probably are aware, in New Zealand, and we're near the capital city, but I actually lived in the country. So little Geoff growing up, we had bush, lots of bush and farmland all around us, and streams. And so little Geoff spent a lot of time outside playing, and then we had a little neighbors. We would play for hours out in the woods, etc. And that was always fun. Loved that. And everybody, my family helped found the town that we grew up in. So everybody knew who I was and who my dad and my grandfather was. So you could never hide out in our town. Everybody like, oh, you're Ivan Benge's boy.
Easy to get in trouble.
But it was a great place to grow up. And it was fun.
How many siblings did you grow up with? Were you close?
I'm the oldest of three boys. And I have a brother who is 2 years younger than me and another one who's 9 years younger.
So you were the ringleader.
I was the ringleader. And then when, my brother who was 9 years came along, my other brother had some issues with him. So he and I, the youngest one, forged a bond because I was always breaking him or my other brother up and like keeping peace in the family.
That is amazing. So what kind of things were interesting to you as far as like activities or hobbies when you weren't playing? Because I can only imagine how beautiful the countryside was for you in the woods, and that would just be an amazing time outside constantly. But when you weren't outside, what interested you?
Well, just the countryside, animals, the farm across the road. I would, even though I was a little boy, I would work there in the weekends and help feed the animals and dole out hay. And shearing season, I was always busy running around with big bundles of freshly clipped wool and stuff. And so that was good. My grandparents, my mother's parents were very close to. They were Irish, and they took me to places. We had the Highland Games in New Zealand, and they would take me to that. And so to be introduced to all of that, and when we were with them, there was the Irish and the Scots connection. That so we did lots of different things. So that was always fun. And I just also liked being solitary. I like to just be walking around and thinking and dream. Everybody called me a daydreamer.
Dreamer.
Yeah,
That is good though. I mean, it's so fun just to sometimes be surrounded by all of the beauty and all of the immense, expanse of the outdoors. And it gives you reason to dream. I mean, you see things that are big and beautiful and you're a part of it, and it's like, I think it
right.
really inspiring. Um, Tell me a little bit about what the education side of life was like for New Zealand, because even just in talking to your wife some, it was a little eye-opening just to kind of understand the process of education for her. So, what was it like for you as a child as far as your education?
Um, it was it was good, but it was challenging at first. New Zealand's always had a relatively good education system, and it valued literacy above all else.
Mhm.
But I'm 4 years older than Janet, so I grew up under a different regime, an older regime that was much more austere about how you learned, and she grew up under one that was a little looser and was working with some new theories. And so
Mm.
because I was a bit of a daydreamer, and I would prefer to daydream than, as my teacher said, apply myself to learning, which uh, in truth, that wasn't quite. I was learning, I just in a different way.
Right?
So I was got branded early on as a remedial reader, a slow reader.
Mm.
So while the rest of the class were learning to read, I had to go with a group of several other students to the teacher's staff room, where we had a special reading group when we were supposed to be being taught to read, because reading, was prime
Yeah.
thing for us to learn. But of course, we were steeped in the older ways. And so when we got things wrong, instead of just the teacher trying to correct us and give us some advice on how we might do that, no, we got spanked around the legs with a big wooden ruler and stuff.
Oh.
So that didn't endear me to reading or learning in a lot of ways, but I prevailed, somehow got through that experience. But yeah, so I started out life, even though I ended up my life being entangled with books, as a remedial slow reader.
I love
But
that. That's amazing. Well, so as you grew and you went through that process of education, at what point do you recall feeling like you knew what you wanted to do? Like, when you were done with your education, what did you want to be when you grew up?
um, I was reluctant to leave high school. I liked high school. It was very social. It was fun, but I also didn't do very well there, and missed all the exams that I was supposed to pass. And in fact, yeah, as a writer, I failed English twice in high school in the national exams. I got
There
less
you
the
go.
second time than the first. So yeah, I was not well. In fact, one time we went back after we had been living overseas. We actually were starting to write books, and one of the friends from the church who was leading this other church introduced me as the boy who was born to be nothing, just which reflected my kind of family's working class roots and my inability to focus. Yeah, but I did begin to focus on things. And I became interested. One of the greatest things that I ever did, and as a slow reader, well, my dad used to read to us, and every night in this monotonal voice, and I
Mm,
think I didn't mind. In the Sunday school, they would once a year you got prizes, and the prizes were books, and so my dad would read the books, and lots of them were about missionaries.
mm.
And so he would read, and I just absolutely loved that. So it opened my mind to stories. And the thing that cured my reading and gave me an insatiable curiosity about the world was my parents bought a complete set of the World Book Encyclopedia
Oh,
and
yes.
installed it in my bedroom. And I don't know whether it was a work of genius or whether that was the only place it would fit, but I pretty much read that, all the 26 volumes, and then the update volume that would arrive every year
Oh,
from
wow.
cover to cover.
Yeah.
And so, as I was actually talking with my daughters at the weekend, we were out for lunch. Yeah, that was the internet for me. There was no internet. I became like a walking internet because I absorbed all of this knowledge through reading, and it really opened my mind to the world that existed beyond New Zealand. And believe me, New Zealand is the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's nothing is close to it. So that gave me a desire to obviously see it, but it helped my reading no end
Oh,
and
yeah.
filled my head with a lot of interesting facts. But as finally I did leave high school, I ended up doing some manual jobs. I worked on an assembly line, assembling GM cars in New Zealand, and then I was a driller, which was a fun job, drilling water wells and test bores for engineering projects. And I was pretty good at that. And then I eventually moved over to food service. And so I was a chef, and I worked in quantity catering situations, institutional cooking, and for that. And I became the head cook and food service director of the largest Christian camping and convention center in New Zealand.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I turned out to be actually quite good at organizing and systematizing and putting chaotic situations in order.
In order there.
And so
that is
I
a
was
talent
happy.
and a gift.
Yeah, I could have gone on with that for a long time, but
So
didn't quite go that way.
Tell me a little bit about at what juncture in your life you met your wife to be, and how did that develop for you?
Her brother was a TV cameraman, and so I think he's a year younger, 2 years younger than me, and he came to where I'm from, Wellington area, bottom of the North Island of New Zealand, it's the capital city, and somebody had told him, you need to get a hold of Geoff and his brother, and so he did, and we became really good friends, and so I met Janet through him, and then I didn't really pay that much attention. Well, she was actually engaged to somebody else at that time, and but then when Alistair, her brother, turned 21, we had big birthday parties in New Zealand when you turned 21. So I went home to his hometown to attend and, be part of his 21st birthday celebration. Well, his parents had left town and left Janet to organize everything. And she had since broken up with the person she was engaged to. And then somehow we noticed each other, and we struck up a relationship and just sort of connected at a deep level. And a year later we were married.
That's incredible. What stuck out to you about, family at that point, and what you wanted your family to look like as far as moving forward? How did you want to stay there where you were? And is that how you saw that happening, or did you see yourself adventuring into the world?
No, by that stage I'd been to the US and worked with that was in 1975, and worked with the ministry for 6 months, and so I had some experience. But I was also, at the time we met, training to be a pastor. So the future looked like, okay, Geoff will be the pastor, and Jana, she's was very maternal, and she was a teacher, great with kids, and so she looked forward to having more kids than we ended up having. But I think 6 was like, yeah, so that was kind of what we thought we were settling into.
Okay.
And yeah, and I actually, at the same time we did that, of my education journey, I was attending university at the same time, getting a degree in history and philosophy, because despite being terrible at school, New Zealand, and you had to pass exams to get into university in New Zealand, you couldn't
Right.
go. So only a small portion of the population went. But they also, if you were over 21 years old, I was 24 when we got married, you got a second chance, and the government would let you go to the because they ran the universities, and most people got paid to go to university in some way or
Okay.
another.
Yeah.
And so they would lay out, okay, well, yeah, you can go for a year, but you have to meet this criteria. And if you do that, then you can go on and get the degree, and we'll pay for it. And so I did. I actually was working at a hospital, and I got salmonella, food poisoning, right after we were married. So
Oh,
I was,
no.
because it's a communicable disease, I was laid off work indefinitely. And that day they told me that was the last day you could enroll in university. So I'm like, I'm just going to go do this university thing. And so I did it. Her family just thought I was totally crazy, and like were trying to talk me out of it. But lo and behold, I was actually really good at it. And at the end of my first year, I'd done so well that I earned the highest scholarship you could get in New Zealand to get paid by them.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So I did manage to wangle a degree in history and philosophy.
That's amazing.
At the end of it. So yeah, after we did that, and that sort of drifted back into food service, and yeah, Jana and I were happy with that. We would, and then we had our daughter, our oldest daughter was born, and we thought we were going this one way, but things turned rather differently for us in the end.
Yeah. So where did that turn take place?
The turn took place when we were we were living back in from the food service thing. When I was running the convention center and all of that, and I was really focused on finishing my degree and becoming an ordained pastor. But the interesting thing was that as that day approached of becoming an ordained pastor, I'm like, being a pastor is just not for me. For some reason, I like parts of it, but the whole thing just didn't click. And I said, I need some breathing room. So I withdrew from that. So while I was trained up until I never was fully ordained. And so, and it was around that stage that we ran into some people from the Youth with a Mission ship, the Anastasis. And we got talking to them, and it turned out that the food service on the ship was kind of a bit of a disaster. And so and we thought, well, maybe God's saying something here. And so with Youth with Mission, you had to go to a training school before you could move on or do anything. So we did that in a place called Pahi in New Zealand. And then while we were there, the director of the ship, Don Stevens, came. And so we talked to him and said, you need to go talk to this person and tell them I sent you. And sure enough, with the experience and stuff, they were really keen for us to come. So
yeah,
as soon as we finished that school, we got on an airplane and flew to Honolulu, where the ship was by then, and set to work on the ship.
Yeah, can you tell a little bit for listeners that may not be familiar with Youth with a Mission, and those of us who are, we just call a YWAM, but can you tell us a little bit about, especially back then, like, or even how the story progressed to now, but what they did, what was their purpose?
Youth with Mission was a missionary organization, but it's the unique thing about it. It back in the '60s, it was started by Lauren Cunningham,
Mm.
and the whole purpose was to mobilize young people out of churches, youth groups and stuff, to go on outreaches to foreign countries and different locations and share the gospel. And then as time went on, to help in more practical ways with, helping people in villages build churches and do things like that. So that was the kind of organization it was. And having the ship was a growth of that, helping people. It was a
Okay.
medical mercy ship, but it also trained people in different things, as well as carrying out surgeries and taking care of healthcare. And it continued to grow. It became a huge organization and still is a
Mm.
huge organization. So we became part of that. And
So you were going to Honolulu, which is where the ship was, right? After
yeah,
your training, and you were going to go out and you were going to be part of the food service
yeah.
help at that point. So what was the plan as far as like where you were going? Just it was just a medical ship that would go around. Um,
Yeah, its purpose, was to go to places and to carry out specialized surgeries, like people with cleft palates and
right.
eye things and a whole heap of things that were quite common in third world countries.
Mm,
But when we got to Honolulu, the ship had done some of that, and but it got stopped by the Coast Guard
mm,
because it did not meet. It met international criteria for doing what it was doing, but it didn't meet Coast Guard standards, so it was stopped, and they had to fit a sprinkler system in the whole ship.
oh
The
wow.
ship was an old Italian liner that it was also a cargo
Mm,
liner combo. So we were stuck there. So I ended up, and people had to get off the ship. So
yeah.
we had three different places. So I had to run kitchens in three different places and organize. And
Mm,
it kept me very busy, sometimes 16 hours a day or more.
that's crazy.
But it
So
was interesting.
did you all ever end up traveling on the ship to serve in different areas or did you move on to something else from that point?
No, we didn't. Jenna's ridden on it. She had to go on the ship and do some writing work after
Mm.
that was back in Europe. No, I've never seen. Well, we got towed from one end of the Honolulu harbor to the other. That was
That
about
was
as
it.
far. Otherwise, yeah. And so, yeah, no, we were stuck on that, and and then I got recruited out of that, and we ended up in the Philippines because they had bought this old hotel, and they wanted to put a new kitchen in and
Mm,
put the food service whole deck it out and get it together. And I had the experience, so they recruited me, and
yeah.
we moved off to the Philippines, and that's where we made the transition into writing.
Okay. And when did your family start to grow? When did you start having children?
Our oldest daughter was born in 1983, and then our second daughter was born in 1986. And we also have an adopted Filipino son who was born in 1977.
So
And
were your
he
children born in the Philippines?
no, our oldest daughter was born in New Zealand. She was six
Okay.
months old, I think, or 9 months old when we left New Zealand.
Okay.
Um, our other daughter was born in Texas. By then,
Okay.
we had switched to writing, and we ended there. And our Filipino son was born, of course, in
In the
Manila.
Philippines. Yeah.
And he was an abandoned kid, and now he lives in New Zealand. He always wanted to live there, so
Oh
he's
wow.
down there. Yeah.
So you said that you kind of switched into writing in the Philippines. So
Mm.
can you share a little bit about how that became a part of your story because you wouldn't have expected that in the beginning. So,
No, I never set out to be a writer.
yeah.
We're involved in the writing community, and lots of people are working very hard to get discovered and
Yeah.
and I honestly have to say, I never went looking for writing. Writing found me, and I had no idea that I even had any talent really for it.
Right.
So when we were in the Philippines, and to a lesser extent on the ship, but once we got to the Philippines, because we were at the hotel, even it was surrounded by some pretty poor people and villages and stuff, and so they had a clothing distribution system and that, and we began to notice this. And Janet started writing, because as all missionaries do, newsletters that to help raise funds.
Yes.
And so she began writing a little newsletter for just to go into our personal stuff. And then people started reading, so can we use that? Can we do that? And so we did that. And then news got around, I guess, that, Janet in particular was doing this. And then the whole hotel project, a whole other story, fell through. So we then had to move out of that little village. It was just outside of Manila and back into the city. And the director for Youth with a Mission in the Philippines came to us and said, I hear you guys write. Well, they wanted to start a national newsletter. So they said, would you come and write? And so I said, well, okay, it's not much else, So this seems to be the door that's opening. So we went there and we did that. And we use it's easy in newsletters just to kind of tell people, here, this is all that's going on here, et cetera. And we knew, and I guess, it comes from a deep appreciation we did have of storytelling, which for me at least hadn't really recognized, was that when we write, and people had begun telling us about our newsletters and stuff. When I went to China back in the old days when it was still very communist and very closed, and people were like, oh man, I just felt like I was there. It was incredible. And so we tried to give that level of proximity to the readers of the newsletter. So I spent a lot of time in the city, in some of the poorest parts of the city. I spent months on the garbage dump in Manila researching life there, because we had a big work with medical work and stuff on that. And doing that and writing about it. And the newsletter was usually successful, and it became a kind of a pattern for other people. And somehow on the other side of the world, John Sherrill, I know the Sherrills, who'd written The Cross and the Switchblade and The Hiding Place, and a whole heap of other top-selling Christian books.
Right.
Well, they had helped Lauren get his book written and helped his sister. And so out of that had come this idea to run a school for writers in Texas.
Okay.
And so they were recruiting for people to come and to be taught by the Sherrills. And so I got this call from Jan Rogers. It was Lauren Cunningham's sister. So everybody talks about you guys, and we want you to come to this. And
that's great.
Well, Jana we'd adopted a son, and Jana was also just found out she was pregnant. No.
Yeah.
We're probably going to go back to New Zealand and do some things. So we didn't, but she was very persistent. And I think on the fourth call, she called, but then we'd had a change. Of course, it was also expensive for us to go from one side of the world to the other.
Right. Yeah.
But in the interim, some friends of ours in New Zealand had sold their farm, and they felt like they were supposed to tithe the sale, and they'd got a pretty nice sum for it to somebody, and they wanted to tithe it to us. So we actually, at that stage, there was money in the bank. And so when she called the fourth time, I said, okay, maybe you are persistent and maybe this is the right direction for us to go. So we said
Right.
yes. So in fear and trepidation, our son had to stay because of some things that went on, had to get sorted out with his adoption. So our oldest daughter and Jana and I set off in fear and trepidation to Texas, where I had been before, but
Okay.
Jana had never been there. And we flew to Los Angeles from Manila via Tokyo, and then we got on a Greyhound bus and rode 2.5 days to Texas.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then we walked into this classroom, and of course, like, oh man, why did we? You doubt yourself. Like, why are we even here? We haven't got the goods. I mean, struggling to write an 8 or 10-page newsletter, it took all our energy and creative drive, and like, now you want us to write books, and so we arrived there, and for some reason, it just clicked with us. We knew what they were talking about. And not everybody that was in the school, there were a lot of people like, I don't get this. And we were like, oh, this is easy, do this, So that's what happened. We spent, I think, 5 or 6 months in that school. We learned a lot from the Cheryls and another guy who was teaching there, David, who was also a writer and editor, and he was the editor at the publishing house the Cheryls owned. And so apparently they all recognized that we had some talent and started encouraging us, and then told Youth with a Mission that you need to not let these people slide through your fingers. So then they invited us to join the ministry at the end. And by the end of that writing school, I already had a book contract with a publisher and stuff. So all kinds of things happened in that school that set us on the road to where we find ourselves now. What was that? We're 41 years later, where our career has been writing books, and we're known worldwide for writing books.
You said you had a contract when you came out of the school. What was that for? What type of books were you writing at that point?
Back in those days, in the early years, we wrote more didactic books, nonfiction to a theme. And so one of the YWAM leaders had written a book that he had self-published, and now a publisher wanted to publish it themselves. Publishing house, I think it was Whitaker House. And but they wanted the book cleaned up, and they wanted some changes and et cetera. And it needed quite a bit of work to make all that happen.
Okay.
So we entered into a contract with them, and we came. So that was the first contract to do that work. Yeah. And then soon after that, we linked up with Floyd McClung Jr., who was then the president of Youth with a Mission, and he had written several books. And then we became his ghostwriters for a number of projects, and developed a pretty close relationship. So much so, one time when we were living in Tonga, he just faxed us some chapter titles. Says, "This is the book I want. I need this." So we knew him well enough by then. We wrote the book, and I came back to the US, and we sat together in Palm Springs and pieced the book together from that. Yeah.
And we'll be right back. What if this summer did more than just fill your teens' time? What if it played a foundational role in who they're becoming? At Excel Summer Leadership Camp, students step into a transformational adventure experience designed to help them discover their calling, discern what truly matters, and learn how to live it out with wisdom and courage. Through outdoor adventure like camping, whitewater rafting, and rock climbing, intentional community, and Christ-centered mentorship, Excel Summer Leadership Camp equips young adults to grow in their leadership, their character, and their faith. Right now, you can get $100 off your next camp session with code FPEA 2026. Learn more and apply today at theexcelcamp.org. And now back to the show. So it's really interesting, the ghostwriting process to me, and the way that you are working through that. Like, at what point did you feel like I want to move into something that's what we're writing, what I want to write, what I'm doing? Because you did that for a while.
Yeah, we wrote for 11 years, but by the time we came to write the books that we're known for now, the heroes, we'd written way in excess of 100 books. We've lost contract, forgotten what so many of them were.
Were those published books under your name yet? Like, what was the first book under your name that was published?
Most of when you're a ghostwriter, it's ghostwriting is, well, it's not quite the same as it was 40 years ago. It's changed because self-publishing and technology has changed publishing and certainly changed ghostwriting. But it was a big phenomenon, or it was a big part of publishing back then.
Yeah.
In fact, a good majority of the books that came out had a ghostwriter who was either acknowledged or had a byline. Mostly, we usually had a byline, meaning, with so-and-so on the cover, but not always. And so, yeah, you did that, but it was a tough business because you had very tight parameters to meet, either for the author or, a lot of times we were doing it for the publisher. So they, you have this time, you've got to do this, get with this person. Sometimes you have to go the other side of the world to get with this person, and pick their brains. But at the same time, you have to become a literary ventriloquist. You have to listen to them and see how they try and pick up how they view the world, how they talk, all of these things, and then include enough of that into the text that you write that's clear and ordered, because that was another big part of putting things in order. We would often find pastors or teachers, I want to put my whatever it is in. And then we would go through and get it all transcribed, and then we'd talk it through and say, like, well, you say this here, and that was fine. This was day one of your week's teaching, and on the last day you say this, but those two things actually don't gel. They work against each other. So it was a challenge getting it into order. And for some people, I've said it that way for my whole ministry, and you can't, because it's like I used to tell them, it's like you have one of the shotgun or a blunderbuss, you just fire all this stuff out. We all just take the little bits that come by our ears, and it's important to us. When you're writing your book, when you're putting your work into a book, you're weaving a rope on every end, got to go somewhere to do the work that pulls your reader along. Right. And if they don't, they can have their thumb here. You said this here, but over here you said that. And so all of those things. And then, of course, you mine your own experience, because you have to come up with all kinds of illustrations and et cetera. So, you spend your time taking every experience you've had and working it into some kind of illustration.
Oh, yeah.
So, ghostwriting is hard. The burnout factor, at least back then, was quite high on it too. Most ghostwriters, you'd do it for a few years and
that was it.
Move on, because it was difficult. But back in those days, it actually paid quite well. So you could carry out your, because for us it was ministry, but we had to live, and so
of course,
earning that, it was great.
So by the time you were ready to write your own books, you probably were really ready to write your own books and not have to think about someone else's voice and everything else, right?
That exactly what happened was the guys at YOM Publishing in Seattle had noticed in the homeschool market, because they had started selling some books, not the Hero series at that time, but into the market, that there were these biographies, old biographies. Some of them were 100 or more years old that had just been republished, and they were having people come by. Do you have any modern missionary stories, etc.? And so I remember it. I'm not sure it was a homeschool thing here. We live in the Orlando area, or it was a Christian booksellers thing. But they took us to see all these books. Do you think you could do something that updated all these? And we think there's a market there. So that we entered into a negotiation, and we had written a couple of smaller ones for another publisher but that were picture books. But we did enjoy the process, and I have a degree in history, and so I was always interested
perfect.
in that. Yeah. So we said, I think we can do it. And so we wrote the first book in the series, which was the book on Hudson Taylor. And the guys were oh my goodness, this is incredible. And then they wanted, you got to write some more. And so we wrote the first 4 books, and then they launched the series, which then really took off.
And what year was that you wrote the first one?
We started writing the first book in 1997, and it was published in the year after. And so and so within 2 years, all the first 2.5 years, all the first 10 were done and out in the marketplace.
And how many are there now?
There are 82 right now. There's an 83rd written, and we're halfway through the 84th, which is J.R.R. Tolkien.
Wow.
Yeah. So they'll be both out later this year.
That's amazing. It's just incredible to me because, there's going to be a lot of families who are going to know these YWAM books. Like I said, as soon as I started homeschooling, everybody kept talking about it, and I didn't even know what YWAM was at that point. It's not something I had ever heard of. And I didn't understand exactly what they were saying. And I remember going to the convention in Orlando for FPEA as an attendee and seeing the booth where the books were being sold. And immediately my son, who was probably about 7 at the time, was just, can we get this one and this one and this one? He loved history from the time he was conceived, I believe. So he wanted to consume all of those stories, and so it was something we have collected them over the years, and my children have read them. They've been our read alouds, and it's very interesting to just kind of hear how that all came to be for those of us who've loved them, and how many of those books and subjects came to be because of requests. Did you get a lot of requests for certain ones?
Yeah, we got some requests. I knew, because I grew up in a denomination, lots of people like the George Mueller book is probably the top-selling book in the series. Well, I grew up in the denomination that he helped co-found.
Yeah.
So I knew that story, and they were very strong into missionary stuff. So a number of the first stories, they were drawn from books and stories I'd grown up around. And and so then we would find them. And when we were doing that, Jen and I, we write as a team. Both of us have written books on ourselves, but all of the Christian Heroes ones, pretty much, we have written together. Because when we're writing, we both love storytelling, but we believe that you're not just reading. We haven't really been successful if we don't make our readers feel something and touch them in some kind of way. Not to just manipulate their emotions per se, but we want the story to mean something to their to the lives of those who read that. And so they did connect, and it's been amazing. And that, as you taught the read alouds, that was something that we were just books, and they were being sold, and we were churning out. We first started the series about 6 of those a year, and then we were doing some other projects. So we didn't spend a lot of time going to homeschool things and checking in. We just were churning this out. But once we did, and we began, and then people began to find us online and got the stories of the people who had read these books and the whole. In fact, one time I was at the show here in Orlando, and this gentleman came up to me like, I don't know what you did, but you hijacked my brain. I forget which story he'd read, which then, like, we hear something similar to that, and it just meaning that, like, the story just drew him in, and couldn't do it. And then we heard about the reading aloud in family groups and stuff, and then we started hearing people, we were reading this on vacation, and we had to pull over to the side of the road, and which is like, okay, great for the author, to hear that, but even greater to see the way that God can move through and touch people's lives and bring families. I think that's the thing that really, it's not that you read the book and enjoyed it, but how it's changed families and drawn people together and made people who, like me, slow readers, remedial readers, into good readers, because they had to discover, if you want to hear more of these, then you need to get your reading up to snuff.
Yeah, so, and I think they're especially effective in connecting younger, kids with the person who they would seem very far removed from sometimes. These people, either whether it was over time that they're removed from them, or they only heard about them as an adult, or like what they did. There's a way that these stories connect them to the person, not just the history, if that makes sense. And I think that's the effectiveness.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's amazing.
Well, and that's kind of what we're striving for, is we want you to fall in love with this person, and what they did in the same way that we did. We have the privilege of riding around with these people for however long it takes to get the book done. And sometimes it's we're pretty sad when we have to end the book.
Close
we
had
a nice relationship. It's time to, and of course it's time to put most of what you learned aside, because we have to now uptake a whole other person's life and work on that.
Yeah.
So
other projects that you've done, because you said you work on other things. What out there would be something that you would say would be of interest for reading to your YWAM, familiar people who know what that is? What else have you written that you would direct them to?
Well, there's another book that Youth with a Mission actually published. It's called Cell 58. It's about a friend of ours who was imprisoned in Iran and sent to Evin prison, where most people don't come out alive.
Wow.
And it's probably quite timely given what's going on now. But Dan was put in prison there, and his story was very difficult to write because he was stuck in this cell and that. But it really, it's an amazing story. And that's a really good one to read. We have one that hopefully it's going to get published this year. We wrote about another ministry called Homes of Hope, and about how all these different people coming together can change the lives of people. And it uses a slightly different style than we've used before, but those who have read it and absolutely love it. So that's coming. And then there's, because we were ghostwriters, some books we can't even. We've written some of the big sellers we've had as ghostwriters. We can't even say we participated in, but we did, and we worked on. We had the privilege of Keith Green, the gospel singer, his book "A Cry in the Wilderness."
Yeah,
they just dumped these big boxes here and said we need a book, and so
wow,
we worked our way through all of these and produced a book for, I think it was Sparrow Press and stuff, and
Mm,
it might still be out there. And if you go and search for us in
you'll
Amazon
find.
or on the internet, you'll find, because by now we've lost count. Oh, we used to have a list, but a
That's
number of years
incredible.
ago, one of my computers crashed and I lost the
Oh
list. And
no.
I still run
Technology.
across books like, oh, that sounds familiar. Oh my goodness, we wrote that, you know. But yeah, so we've written way in excess of 300, probably closing in on
That's
400
incredible.
books.
Let me
Yeah, and
ask
so
let me
yeah,
ask you this. So a lot of the time when I have an opportunity to speak with authors, and I ask them how would they encourage other writers, people who are maybe interesting in writing or just starting. But, I think that it's a little unique. I mean, a lot of people that want to write novels or want to write other, fiction, fantasy, whatever. But how would you encourage someone who would set out to tell someone else's story?
I think that, well, which is really actually an interesting. I just preface it by saying, at this stage in our life of 42 years of writing, that's one of the things that we really feel we need to do, as the Sherrills did to us. They gave us all their inner secrets.
Yeah.
And so we're working right now to put together some courses and some teaching opportunities. We do teach a lot we go to Europe and teach in writing schools and stuff a lot, but
Yeah.
to actually impart to others so they can take, because as we did, the Sherrills taught us, they mostly wrote about shorter events in the lives of the people, Dave Wilkerson's life and all of this.
Right.
And we've taken what they've taught us, they told us, and we've made it ourselves, but our own, but we tend to, almost all of the people, well, 95% of them
Hmm.
all die at the end. So it's that. So making it yourself and developing, the understanding. We write, what we do is called narrative nonfiction. So we're telling nonfiction stories, but we're using basic narrative techniques that fiction writers and screenwriters and all that use. We're
Hmm.
looking to make the story compelling in that way. And so to teach, you have to have a little bit of an understanding of just how stories fit together and what draws people into it. And also, as we've discovered, we keep hearing this thing, we're wired for story, and it's been a thing. But now neurology and brain science is like saying, this is why you are in that. And so what we find ourselves thinking about now is that connection that comes from the words in the book to the brain of the other person. So just knowing some of those things and just how stories are held together. But then the biggest thing is learning, or developing a practice, I should say, because through that you learn. And one of the things that we do here in Central Florida, or we did for 20 years, because we want to encourage writers of all stripes, because we believe writing is really important
Mm.
and that we can put ideas and we can contend with other ideas if we know how to write. So we did that, and we ran a workshop for 10 years continuously, which was based mostly on prompt writing.
Hmm.
We'd come and you'd do something, and then you would get feedback from your audience, and they would tell you not what was bad with your writing, but the things that were good.
Mm.
And we've seen that with our own eyes. Is like that just transforms people, because people in an environment like that will actually tell you what they want to receive from you when you write, because they like this, they like that. And so when you hear that, you go and develop those things. And
Mm.
now we keep running into people who were part of that, say, oh yeah, that story, I wrote it. The thing was called Silver Fern.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, I got that published, and I've got several of them in that. But so it's like all things, a practice, just writing and doing it. And Janet has just finished. It's about to go up on go live, a
Mm.
course on journaling for high school and middle school students that does that. It's like, hey, here's some different things of journaling you can try, but the whole point of it is to develop a practice of writing.
Yeah.
Because so many people sit down, yes, I want to write a novel and I want to make loads
Yeah.
of money or whatever it is that they want to do. And, that really is not going to happen. It's like anything, it's challenging. You have to learn a whole new set of skills.
Mm.
But if you keep at it, and if you have some basic understanding of how stories hold together,
Yeah.
then, because when you look at most successful writers, you think, oh, I've never heard of them before. They must have sat down and written this book. But
Mm.
then you begin to delve into their history. Yeah, they've written about 4 or 5 novels before that, before they got to this one, because
Yeah.
along the way they learned all of those things.
Yes.
And so, yeah,
Agreed.
that's
Well, I think too with stories that are, biographies that tell people's stories,
mhm,
which my husband, that's probably his favorite genre. I think that it's very interesting when you're reading them. A lot of people think that they're boring, right? A lot of people find biography boring.
mhm,
And then others will find it just fascinating. And then there's those who teeter on the in between. And I think that the teetering on the in between is the audience that you most effectively capture by understanding how to tell story, like you're talking about. Like,
yeah,
I think that there's the factual side of history that you get from, the way people will write and tell you the things that happened, but connecting you to the person and the life that's behind the story is a unique talent. And I don't think that everyone that writes biography has that talent to connect you to the story. You can transfer knowledge and information, but being drawn into a story of a person's life is very effective, and especially when it is a nonfiction, it is a real person, and it's not written to be a novel. And those moments, I think, are where you find inspiration, and that you learn from what the story that's being told, has to offer you as the reader. And
right.
so I fully appreciate that you all have done that, because you have made years of biographies and live stories of people real for children that we've raised and who now love story. Everything that you see today is in marketing, and everything is based on, we all have stories, right? Everybody has a story. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like a trending thought. But I look
Mm.
back to the stories that you all have shared over the years, and it's not a trending thought. It really is who we are. I mean, beginning with the Bible, it's a story of all of these
Right.
lives of all of these people, and the impact that those stories can have.
Right.
So I appreciate your work, and I love what you all have written and shared over the years. And what are you most excited about next?
Well, we've got the next 2 books coming out.
Yeah.
One's in its final edit, and the other one still awaiting finish. And the other thing we're very excited about is the course that Janet's done, and
Yeah.
it's, like I say, going up at epiclearning.com.
Mm.
And it will, again, to try and encourage people to. I think that writers kind of need to explore or their interior worlds,
Yes.
because, and so that's part of what we're encouraging, is to just to think, because ideas, and those, like you were talking about, those ideas that connect,
Right.
well, you have to think them first, and you have to realize, well,
Yeah.
if they affect me, or I think this, other people will, and how can I?
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so
I
that's coming, and then, like I say, we've got. We'll be in Europe teaching in January, and
That's exciting.
stuff. Yeah, but we're going to keep our website is bengebooks.com. So keep an eye on that, and
Okay.
it will have all the information that's different things that are coming up.
That sounds so exciting. Well, thank you. And I'm just going to throw in there for anybody who might be listening in May, you can find all of these YWAM books at the FPEA convention. So, and Epic Learning will be there as well. So we're excited about that. But
and we'll be there as well. So.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So lots of opportunities. But thank you so much. Thank you for joining me today and sharing your story and being an inspiration to so many others who are inspired to write and share stories as well.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for listening to the Not by the Book podcast from the Florida Parent Educators Association. To learn more about homeschooling in Florida or to find resources to help you on this amazing journey, visit our website at fpea.com. If you have any suggestions for future guests, contact me, Suzanne, at notbythebook@fpea.com. Thanks again for listening, and be inspired to live your life not by the book.